So here we have a sagittal section of the brain. So we've just cut down the longitudinal fissure. This would be the left hemisphere of the brain. This is the cerebrum. So we can see this large structure here. This is the largest area of white matter. This is the corpus callosum, And you can see this space in here. This is the lateral ventricle. And I'm actually going to show you another brain that I have cut, that we have the septum pellucidum. So here we have the left hemisphere of the cerebrum. You can see the corpus callosum, but here we have the septum pellucidum is still intact. So you can see this membrane that's inside where the lateral ventricle would be, and actually the septum pellucidum, what it does is it separates the left and the right lateral ventricles from one another. And then this inferior part of this area of white matter, this is the fornix. Here, okay, so you have the fornix, and then we have this space here. So this is the third ventricle. This is the third ventricle. You have a lateral ventricle here, third ventricle here. And then we go into, let's do the parts of the diencephalon. So the diencephalon, you have the thalamus. So this large structure here, this is the thalamus. The hypothalamus, and so the hypothalamus, you would have, you can see a little bit where it sort of bumps out. This would be a mammillary body of the hypothalamus. So the thalamus, the hypothalamus, and then here is the epithalamus or the pineal gland. So that's the diencephalon. Some other structures while we're looking here, you can see the optic chiasm right there where we've cut through the optic chiasm. Okay, now we're going to go into the brainstem. So the first part of the brainstem is the midbrain, and there's some structures in the midbrain that you need to know. First, we have the superior colliculus. This is the inferior colliculus of the midbrain, and then this is a cerebral aqueduct. So cerebrospinal fluid would flow from the lateral ventricles to the third ventricle through the cerebral aqueduct. So all of these structures, the superior colliculus, the inferior colliculus, the cerebral aqueduct, are in the midbrain. So this is the midbrain of the brainstem. And then here you can see this first little sort of bump, okay? This is the pons. That's the pons, also part of the midbrain. That's the middle portion of the midbrain. And then here you can see a little bit. It's very subtle, but you can see a little where it's separated from the pons. This is the medulla oblongata, and then we go into the spinal cord over here. Then you have the cerebellum here. The cerebellum, we have this structure that pokes up in to the cerebellum. This is the fourth ventricle, So that's another ventricle where we would find cerebrospinal fluid. And then you can see this branching white matter in the cerebellum. That is called the arbor vitae, which means tree of life. Okay, so those are the major structures on the sagittal surface. One other thing, okay, so you see the white matter here, okay? You see the white matter in the cerebellum, but I'm going to show you a frontal cut of the cerebrum to show you some differences between the gray and the white matter in the cerebrum. The gray matter, remember, gray matter is unmyelinated axons, and cell bodies make up the gray matter of the brain. So here is a frontal section, and you can really see the white matter, and white matter is going to be myelinated axons. So you can really see the separation of the gray and the white matter in the cerebrum. So how gray and white matter are oriented in the cerebrum, you have the cerebral cortex, this outer cortex of the cerebrum is composed of gray matter. Then we have different types of tracts. Tracts are just axon processes. They're nerve processes within the brain. They're called tracts within the central nervous system. We have commissural tracts, we have projection tracts, we have, so the corpus callosum, it's been cut here, but you can see part of it. And the fornix would be commissural tracts. Commissural tracts connect the different hemispheres. So those are some different types of white matter. And you also have deep areas of white matter called the basal nuclei, but we're not going to look at those in this particular video. So that's just the arrangement of the gray and the white matter. And then in the cerebellum, you have the outer cortex of gray matter, and then that inner branching, the arbor vitae, which is white matter. So those are the major structures on the dissected brain.